what is the fastest path to 100 million in ARR? That is not really just the question I'm thinking about. Sleepy markets are interesting. Opportunities don't just come to you. You have to actively be, in a position where you increase the surface area for lightning to strike.
Hey everyone, I'm Morgan Blumberg, partner at M13. Today's conversation is with Nami Baral, founder and CEO of Niural. I've known Nami for years, and I've had a front row seat to her journey as a repeat founder. What drew us to Niural was her conviction that one of the most complex and overlooked parts of the global economy was ready for reinvention. Payroll, compliance, benefits, and cross-border payments are messy, highly regulated systems that most people avoid. Nami saw something different, a chance to rebuild critical financial infrastructure from the ground up with AI. At M13, we invest early in visionary founders, building through structural shifts, often before the opportunity is obvious to everyone else. We're especially drawn to founders who understand the complexity of an industry well enough to see what others miss and to use that insight to create an entirely new category. In this conversation, Nami shares why she spent years building before going to market, how she thinks about creating a generational company, and why Payroll is just the beginning of a much bigger vision. Let's get into it.
Nami, thank you so much for being here today. Nami is the CEO of Niural. We're very lucky to have her take a few flights to join us here today. We're very excited about Niural and excited just to chat with you. So you and I talk about this all the time, but ups and downs of company building. You're no stranger to it. You started a company and worked early on in a business that sold to Twitter. Then you started your own company, sold it to Acorns. You're doing it again. You're back in the ring. What's different about this one? Why are you doing it again? And what did you think about in terms of the people you wanted to bring along the journey this time?
Yeah, so the companies that I've been a part of have all been, part of really interesting trends, right? But with this one, it was very special because it was also the most unconventional choice that people typically think repeat founders would take. So for context, my previous company was an AI agent in consumer fintech, right? And Niural, the way the world sees it today, is AI agent for global payroll. Now, world has woken up to what AI agents are these days, but back when I started in 2022, the ChatGPT movement was just about to arrive. So at that time, a lot of people were asking me, why are you going to start a payroll company, right? Like, is that what you are so excited about? And truly, I am super excited about global payroll. And the reason is it is one of the sleepiest markets out there. And as you saw with, when Latif was sharing the presentation earlier, sleepy markets are interesting because they give you a contrarian, way to approach where value can be built, right? And so when I looked at this ecosystem, I looked at all of these companies. Everybody knows payroll companies, but when you look at the journey that a company takes through their payroll vendors, they start with one, they migrate to another, at different stages of their life cycle, and also they use multiple different vendors for running the same workforce, right? So you think of your team as one, but why do you have to use Deel for international, ADP for domestic, benefits with somebody else, your vendor payments with somebody else? It just does not make sense. Now, in the world of AI agents, building a comprehensive one singular stack of complete system of record is actually possible to do in proper time, right? Something like this, if I'd attempted to build 10 years ago, would have taken me 20 years to build without the technological innovation that has happened in the last several years. So because of that, I got super excited about really reviving this very, very sleepy category. This is one of those categories where the TAM is endless. Every company in the world could be a Niural client. And with that idea in mind, we wanted to build something that truly could accommodate every company in any stage of its life cycle, from day one to IPO and beyond, right? And so the really interesting thing about building this as a repeat founder was that I had the conviction to say that I'm going to take 2.5 years to just go and build this product and not go to market. And the luxury and the privilege I had was I knew the investors who would really buy into that vision. And I was able to handpick and select those investors who were patient enough to see and wait for that next moment to arrive. And I think when I think about the kind of people that I brought along in this journey, obviously the investors have been selected to be, those patient that patient capital that knows where the puck is going and is willing to wait for it. And the people that I have brought along to my team are people I've worked with in the past. I've pressure tested my relationships with them. These are people who have been my previous co-founders, who have been my previous team members. And it is the power of that network that has allowed me to build this in record time.
Yeah. So much about what you're doing at Neural is so different and so unique in terms of what else is on the market. I think that's one of my favorite things. I mean, you mentioned a few right there, and one of them was going heads down for 2.5 years. Talk to us a little bit about that decision. Did you ever question it? I mean, now, you're reading, I was just reading an article with a friend over there, 2-person company does, 1.5 billion in sales in a year. So talk to us about sort of that decision process. It was contrarian. And how do you feel about that now? And how did you feel about that in the moment?
Yeah. Neural was built with a lot of intentionality, right? And so I knew at that time that I wanted to do this, and I wanted Neural to be a generational company. And to build a truly generational company, you cannot take shortcuts. So I knew, and I had that conviction. Now, did I doubt myself at those moments? Those doubtful moments come all the time, right? Especially if you read anything in the news, it gives you heartburn every single day, right? Especially as a founder. But at the same time, when I think about where Neural can go, it is a company that is built to withstand the test of time, right? And when I think of how relevant Neural can be and how generational it can be, I truly look at my time with Neural to be in decades. And so 1 or 2 years is just a blip for me for the amount of time I'm going to really be building this and how relevant it will be for the longest time to come, right? When in terms of the current AI ecosystem and how you see companies being built and them getting to revenue in record time, that is also kind of part and parcel of this journey. Neural is also going to be one of those companies, but because it was so important to lay the foundation right, we had to put in that upfront amount of time and energy. So when I look at Neural, I look at it in terms of what is the fastest path to 100 million in ARR? That is not really just the question I'm thinking about. What is the fastest and the most sturdiest path to 100 billion in ARR? And what is the infrastructure that you put in today? That is what matters to me. So my goal is in a different it's for a different number and it's a different era, and I feel very confident.
Snaps for that. Snap. Yeah.
100 billion in ARR. I'll come and speak here again. The 100 billion ARR sounds just like a number that is a figment in somebody's imagination, because for every company it's a big milestone, right? But here's what I can tell you about Neural that makes me feel so confident about that number. There are so many companies, there are hundreds of payroll companies out there with billions in revenue themselves. All of them are solving point problems. And Neural is the only one that can solve payroll from end to end. ASO model, PEO model, EOR model, contractor payments, international local entity payroll. It's ADP, Workday, Gusto, Rippling, Deel. All of those capabilities are already within Neural as a roughly 3.5, 4-year-old company, right? That itself is an engineering feat. Now, we have done a lot of that work with AI at the DNA of the company, not as AI that is bolted on as if it's a ChatGPT wrapper, but AI agents work on each and every module of the company. from fraud detection to transaction monitoring to KYB to payroll processing to international state compliance. All of those things are done by AI agents. We run a company that is so capital efficient. Our burn ratio is less than 0.5, and we already have 120 people on the team. Right? That's how the company has been built. It has been built with an immense amount of intentionality, and the tech is working overtime for us, right? And alongside that, we have supplemented that with things that just technology cannot solve for. Benefits is a very interesting and important component to payroll, right? You cannot run a proper company payroll without giving benefits to your employees, right? And so Niural is the newest kid on the block when it comes to AI native payroll, but it is the only company on the block to actually supplement that with direct institutional relationships with its own master plans. So recently, we went live with Aetna on a special master plan relationship. We went live with Guardian. We're going live with Kaiser. We're going live with MetLife. All of these really, really interesting institutional carriers are lending us their credibility and saying, Niural is where the future is going, and we want to be in for the ride, right? So a company like this is a combination of two things. The tech is obviously the important one, and we have obviously built that, but it is also important to make sure that you're bringing all of these larger institutions with you for their journey, because that is what creates stickiness.
Yeah. And talking about that $100 billion revenue figure that you mentioned, and just sort of what you just described as really the foundation and the start of what Niural is, because you're seeing across the ecosystem people disrupting system of record, starting from a point solution wedged down into building a new ERP, a new CRM, something like that. You guys have started from the bottom up, and you're laying the foundation for not just being payroll to folks, right? You're going to take over their system of record. You're selling into not just the head of HR, but the CFO. Tell us about where you go next. Like what is beyond the payroll company, which in and of itself could be $100 billion business, right?
Yeah. Have you heard the story of the Chinese bamboo?
Let's hear it.
Okay. I'm sure folks in the audience have heard that story, right? So, a Chinese bamboo, it's a known fact, I guess, within certain communities, that the Chinese bamboo grows in a really interesting way. For roughly about 4 years, you plant a Chinese bamboo. There's no visible growth on the top, right? And then when its roots spread properly, it grows to 90 feet in about like 4 weeks. That's the immense amount of growth that root can really support. But for 4 years, you don't see anything, right? When we built our overall payroll foundation, we didn't build it just to do payroll processing. Payroll is just one form of money movement that a company makes. It is one of the most important money movement the company makes. It is also the largest for many companies, the largest form of money movement that it makes among its expenses schedule, right? But it is only one of them. So the same structure that can move payroll related funds should be able to handle every inflow, every outflow, and every financial decision that the CFO suite makes. And so that is the way we have built out our overall infrastructure. We once again went very contrarian against what is currently prevalent. Many companies that build for payroll just build for payroll. They'll go and find the easy route, use somebody else's tax engine, go and set up an FPO structure with their local bank, and try to run money for payroll through many different kinds of payroll exemptions. But they're not building the concrete foundation for all kinds of money movement, which comes with its own set of regulatory requirements. The ability to do that not just in the US, but in 150 countries around the world is complexity on its own, right? So one of the things that we have been able to do really well at Niural is understand all of the complexity that exists across the CFO suite, solve that for payroll first, earn the right to then be able to get the trust to move other forms of money for that company. So from payroll, we go to contractor payments, vendor payments, account receivables, and other forms of things that are necessary for the CFO suite. So that's where I think it becomes really, really exciting, because payroll itself can become a huge business. But what Niural is targeting is not just payroll. In my mind, it's ADP, Oracle, and Visa combined, right? And that's a category that is yet to exist, because laying the foundation for something like that is so difficult to do. It has not been attempted before. And we have already gone through that process, built it all. Now the product is in market and it is growing really, really rapidly. So that gives me the confidence to think about that milestone.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a bit, but I guess, one thing you said is that really hasn't been attempted before. I'm curious, I know a little bit about your life story, but what gives you the motivation to go after something like that? I think you once told me that you applied for college, and you can talk a little bit about the story, without Wi-Fi. So I mean, what takes you from that sort of, place in your life to where you are today, and what gives you the ambition to go after one of the largest businesses that could be created in the world?
Yeah. I've always thought of myself as, I think the best founders tend to be calculated risk takers. I'm not somebody who will do a lot of risk taking in, let's say, adventure tourism, but I will take a lot of really interesting risk when I feel like, the world is moving to that place. And that is the conviction that I need to be able to do anything that does not look remotely easy to do, right? So the thing that Morgan was referring to, I was originally born in Nepal. And 20 years ago, Nepal was a very, very different place. It's a very mountainous country. We didn't have access to, proper Wi-Fi. So I had to stay up all night, between the time of, midnight to 4 a.m. with a dial-up connection to submit the Common App application at that time. That would take 3 minutes to load one page. And that's the way I, essentially applied to colleges in the States. And at that time, I was thinking, I need to really go out and see the world, because Nepal is just, a very small place and I haven't seen enough of it. And for me, that was a calculated risk taking and really believing in myself, because I knew that the more information I have, the more opportunities I have, the more I'll be able to, assimilate and, do things that I would not be able to do in Nepal. Now, that kind of theme has gone into multiple different components of my life cycle, just my life journey. I initially was an investment banker. Then, I decided to leave investment banking to start, to go into a startup that was a zero revenue startup at that time. That company became so successful, it got, acquired by Twitter, a very iconic Twitter, and we, were acquired pre-IPO. So I joined Twitter as an early employee, rose up the ranks there. In 2018, left Twitter to start my last company, Harvest, which was the original AI agent in consumer fintech, way before anybody was building AI agents. And then we sold that company to Acorns, and then now I'm building Niural, right? But the common theme across many of these things is you need to have a viewpoint on where the world is going. And I think that is something that you have to really actively think about, right? It's not something that just will come to you. Opportunities don't just come to you. You have to actively be, in a position where you increase the surface area for lightning to strike, right? And I think I put myself in those positions where then I can develop a viewpoint of, okay, this is where the world is going and I want to be there, not here.
And I think something that's really amazing with the culture you guys have built at Niural, and now was it 150 employees now, something like that?
125.
125 employees now, back from two when we met you guys. So incredible feat. It is sort of that culture of bringing people to that vision on the mountain with you, right? And I think something very inspirational about what you guys do is also, taking your best employees that are in the Nepal office and bringing them to the U.S. and giving them the same opportunities that you had, right? So maybe to that point, you can talk a little bit about the secret sauce that's allowed you to basically disrupt three massive legacy industries, and sort of how you've used, your connectivity to Nepal to really do that in such a capital efficient way. I think it's a very interesting aspect of the business.
Yeah. The secret sauce honestly is knowing what to build and sticking with it from the from day one, right? So having conviction in what you're trying to build and not really taking, the path, kind of easily traveled by everybody. That is number one. So to that end, we decided to own the entire, payroll tax engine ourselves. We decided to build direct money movement layers in order to do more than payroll. And we decided to build AI agents since 2022, which was, very difficult to do at that time, right? So part of the secret sauce is conviction. The second thing is, people that we talked about, right? Bringing in the right people for the journey, bringing in the right investors, bringing in the right people who are going to put in 200% of themselves into the day to day of what the company building requires, right? And having those kinds of people who are extremely loyal, extremely low ego, and heads down the best builders, right? Handpicking them. That is, one of the things that has allowed us to do all of these things with extreme amount of capital efficiency. So, for example, we built a really massive R&D base in Nepal, of all places in the world, right? And why did we go to Nepal? Why didn't we go to India? Why didn't we go to Estonia? The infrastructure for hiring is a lot easier if you were to go to those countries. But because I had this link to Nepal, I was from there, and I knew that Nepal itself had a really interesting, kind of STEM curriculum, and the people there, if I were to go there, I'd be able to literally handpick the best people from the best universities, who are, the top folks on their field, and give them access to opportunities that they would have not gotten ever in Nepal, right? And so that brought me both the talent as well as the loyalty and this immense desire to prove themselves to the world, right? Because of those things, I was able to bring all of these folks at a very, very small, kind of relatively low price point compared to all of the talent that you see here. That is obviously giving us a lot of capital efficiency. But then more importantly, it is allowing us to show the ethos of what Niural itself is trying to do, right? If every company in the world can be Niural's client, every person in the world needs to be able to get paid by Niural. And we're showing that in the most remotest places in Earth by starting with Nepal.
Really incredible. Well, you guys also had an incredible milestone this year, past 10 million. That's
Yes.
incredible. Congratulations.
Thank you.
4x last year, gonna 4x again this year. But with growth comes challenges. Can you tell us a little bit about, some of the hard weeks you've had, and where you needed to lean on your investor, and sort of why M13 was the one you usually call for things you can't ask anyone else in your cap table for? Would love to hear.
Yeah, when you grow, especially with the product surface area that we have and the really, really competitive ecosystem that we are in, I mentioned earlier, we compete against some of the giants in this space. Like ADP has been around for 80 plus years. There's other, tech native companies like Rippling and Deel in the space that have, obviously built really, really large, kind of money arsenals for themselves and can outspend us at any time, right? We need to be intentional about how we build a company. We need to be able to build it in a capital efficient way, but then we also need to make sure that we make the most of what is around us, right? And so one of our assets is obviously our cap table, right? These are people who have believed in us from the very beginning, right? And so doing more with them is part of the strategy itself. Now, within folks on my cap table, I obviously feel a lot more comfortable, just coming to M13 with the good, bad, and the ugly of, the founder's journey, right? And I think it's because M13 has, a very similar ethos and, kind of qualities to what I really admire in people, which is low ego, hardworking folks who know where the future is going, right? And so it's the same kind of thing that I look for when I hire my own employees, and it's the same thing that I look for in the best, kind of investors that I pick for myself in the cap table. And M13 really sits at the top of the list. It is for that reason that I'm here, and for that reason alone. And so I cannot thank M13 enough for supporting us through this journey. And in many ways, I think M13 has helped us. The most helpful it has been is not actually capital, right? It is actually being there for the most difficult decisions or the most interesting decisions that we are trying to make. Um, what kind of marketing do we do? How do we stand out in this really, really noisy ecosystem? What is our brand voice? What should our website look like? What should our sales strategy be? These are things that I as a founder talk about with my team all the time. These are the most important questions. I cannot go to all of my investors with these kinds of questions, but I've gone to M13 for each and every one of these things. We have participated in M13's sales lab, right? M13's platform team is amazing. Christine helps us out routinely on marketing, brand communications, things like that. Morgan is my first text anytime I share any good thing or bad thing about what's happening with Niural. When I get stressed out, I'm like, Morgan, can we talk? Right? So that's the kind of relationship that I think everybody just aspires to have with investors. Some of them are like lucky to have to find it. Some of them are not. I definitely am lucky to find that with the M13 team.
Well, we're so appreciative of your time. We know you have a lot going on with the company as you're tackling some monsters out there. So thank you for making the effort. We're honored to be on your cap table. Yeah.
It's such a pleasure, and anything for M13.